I know you've been working with Joey for a long time. You got a couple fighters you're working with. You're now doing a camp for a couple guys looking at a pro day. It's like what has that transition been like to come back to it?
Yeah, I think a lot of it's just kind of coming full circle, but with a more sharpened skill set,
Mm,
right? Because training with Gen Pop, you get really good at just teaching the basic stuff, which I think maybe earlier in my career, I may have tried to overcomplicate things a bit more, just not having that perspective. But now it's
mhm.
like you've really learned how to hammer the basics. So like you're really good like smashing that hammer, and now you know when to get the scalpel out.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's probably the biggest thing you'll learn from working with Gen Pop is how to communicate well, efficiently, and effectively, right? Because these people, they probably don't have any sort of athletic or kinesiology, anatomy, physiology background. So when you're talking to them, they need to be simple, concise, executable cues that you're using. So really, it's just refining your language over time because, like you said, it's easy to, the more you learn, you kind of go through this swing where you start to overcomplicate things and you think of every single variable and you think that every piece of information that you learned applies in every single scenario, which is just simply not true. And it is like, what is it, like the Dunning-Kruger effect, where it's like the less you know, the more confident you are. And then the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know shit about shit. And then you kind of humble yourself. And then over time, you build this kind of cool confidence where you not only understand the knowledge behind things, but you understand more importantly when it applies and when it doesn't apply. And I think that's probably what you're talking about when you say like it came full circle. It kind of swung back the other way because that's the change I've seen in myself is that like there's almost this uh like self-aggrandizing like attitude that comes with knowing the information where you're not necessarily over informing someone for them. You're doing it for yourself at a certain point. It's like you're trying to validate yourself and what you know in that kind of like earlier on stage. It's like, I have all this information. I'm a better trainer than everyone. You should listen to me and not them. When like over time, it's more so the way I look at things is I approach it more so with curiosity. Is like, all right, why is this person moving this way? Why did this cue work for them? Like what's going through their mind when they're going through this movement? And now instead of like telling people what to do, more so what I do is I ask questions like, how did that feel? Where did you feel that? Like, are you, is it painful? Are your symptoms improving? Like XYZ. Like it's more so I start the conversation with a question rather than a statement because I already know what I want to see change, but I want to know why they're not able to execute on it or what they're thinking about that's causing them to make it look the way that it's looking. So kind of coming back to the original point is that like when you're working with Gen Pop, you have a ton of different personalities coming in. And I've had like the people with a bunch of money that the only thing that's causing them to come in the gym is the fact they're spending money on it. And then I've had people that can like barely afford the service that are just dying to get better. And then like literally everyone in between, like the mom of 3 kids that wants to get in shape to go on a hike with their family, or like the busy lawyer that's stressed out and just wants an hour out of his day, he doesn't have to think about work. So it's like I've seen every different type of personality and like every different type of motivating factor that comes in the gym. And if you can take, every single one of those and you can communicate effectively, not just in terms of exercise, like getting them to do what they need to do to exercise well and improve in the gym, but also like in terms of getting their, like managing their personality, like getting buy-in from them, getting them to come back session over session, getting them to understand the process of, you know, I worked. I mean, I still work in a CrossFit gym. I just have my own section of it now. But um, I coached CrossFit for a while when I was like in school, and that was such an accelerated learning curve for me because now you're literally just getting people that know nothing about exercise. You're asking them to do the most complex movements that they can in the gym, and you're getting people that also have the mindset of I don't need to know anything. Like you're going to tell me everything to do. So it's like literally from the ground up, you see like people fail things in every single variation of failure. And you have to communicate it in every single variation of communication because you're not just working one on one, you're working with like 20 people at a time. And it's like you almost have to triage the situation of like, all right, I need to figure this shit out real quick, or like John over there is going to kill himself. He's going to decapitate himself with the barbell today. So, so it's like Gen Pop, I think, is like, I don't know. There's almost this like it's not cool to work with Gen Pop, and I don't think this, but it's like it's easy to think that because it seems kind of mundane. It seems kind of, it's not as flashy as working with athletes or like throwing med balls or doing power cleans. But I think the one person who I'll give credit to in my eyes that like made it cool was Eric Bagheera, is that he's just like, yo, I train Gen Pop and I'm fucking good at it. And he's like, kind of like built his business and his niche around that. And I think that's fucking sick. That's like more people need to own that. It's like, no, I'm really good at helping like everyone. And I think that's a really valuable trainer, someone that's very confident in that, because I think that's the hardest niche to get into, is someone that has to fix everything. Literally, like you'll have people coming to you that maybe like I've even when I had graduated, but I was still training. Like I had people come to me, they're like, I just can't afford rehab, or like my insurance kicked me out of rehab. Like I don't know what to do now. And I'm like, yeah, we'll figure it out. Like come to me. And like you get those clients that like the medical system has kind of failed in that traditional sense, that like rehab should get you back, to at least pre-injury status, if not better. But like they got kicked out, or they can't afford to do it, or they don't have insurance, or whatever it is. So like now you're their medical provider. And I think that's a really cool way to develop a skill set that will kind of push you or excel you in any niche that you want to get into. But you can't skip that. You can't skip that and just go right to the top and like work with professional athletes.
Yeah, dude. God, that was beautiful. I don't know what to add to that. I think like you hit so many good things there, just from like uh training Gen Pop. You get so many different personalities, so you learn how to handle those personalities. Like Type A, Type B, or like people that are going to be very inquisitive, people that don't care at all. Like they just
Yeah.
want to show up and be told what to do. But like I think even when you start working with high performers, like some of them are going to be the exact same way. Like some of the kids we train down in Tampa like want to know why we're doing everything.
Yeah.
How is it going to be better, right? Others are going to be like, hey, like shut the fuck up. I don't care. Like don't talk to me. Like just tell me what to do, right? Like so you're going to see a different spectrum. So it's understanding how to handle these different personalities. It's like, well, if I've trained dozens or hundreds of Gen Pop clients, then like, okay, like I probably know that they're going to be similar to this person that I already trained before. And
Yeah.
you can almost apply that to just like basic exercise execution, like people that suck at getting into their hips. It's like, okay, I've trained these several dozen clients have the exact same issue. Just because they're a better athlete doesn't make them any different if they have the same issue. So I'm probably still going to address the issue in the same way. And
Yeah.
honestly, like I've had easier times like teaching a 60-year-old like grandma how to do an RDL than I have with professional athletes before.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so true. And it's just because like someone is generally athletic, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're like detail oriented enough, or they have that motor learning skill that someone else might have. And that's something that like throws me for a trip. I mean, not anymore. It doesn't, because I expect it, but like you see people that are incredible athletes at the thing that they do, and like they literally can't stand on one leg, or they don't understand how to engage their core to do a plank. And like these very like base level things, it's like, yo, homie, how have you made it this far in your athletic career without just exploding because you don't understand how to use your core at all in a controlled setting? Maybe you can use it to like lay out for a football or like brace for a hit, but like you don't understand, like you don't have that conscious awareness of like use this muscle. And they'll like, I don't know, they'll like punch you in the throat on accident because they don't know the difference between punching you in the throat and activating their core. So it's pretty crazy when you see it in that sort of capacity.
Yeah, I think there's so much value there too. Like we'll see it all the time. Like athletes are like, oh, my back hurts, my knee hurts, my hip hurts, whatever. Sometimes you're like, shit, like I don't know what it is. Most of the time, you watch them move, and you're like, okay, like, hey, buddy, like you're gonna be good. Here's why. Like I can see exactly what the issue is. Like if we address this, that's probably gonna get better.
Yeah, dude, that's one of the things that throws me for a loop, like to this day, with every single person I work with. But it's like people, and the more you know, the worse this gets. I feel like people have no idea how to describe what they're feeling. right? So it's like you ask someone what's going on, and like you have kind of a list or an inventory in your head of like, okay, if it's X, Y, and Z, it's probably this. If it's ABC, it's probably this. And like you can categorize these things pretty well. And then they just use descriptors that like you've never heard before. Like it's a twinge on my left shoulder when I flex my right big toe. And like sometimes when I get out of the car holding my backpack, it hurts, but other times if I'm holding a cup of coffee, it doesn't. I'm like, yo, what the fuck are you saying right now? And like just their interpretation of what's going on in their body is just like so random that you like literally like you're stumped just listening to them describe it. And you're like, all right, I don't know what the fuck I would do for this person. Let's just get them to move. And then the second you see them do like a lunge or like a press or, you know, lift their hands over their head, you're like, oh, I know exactly your issue. And maybe it's not like an issue that correlates with the things that they said, but it's an issue with the way that they're moving. And something I've learned over the years is like, all right, if I see an issue with the way that they're moving, that radiates, you know, if it starts midline, it's going to radiate everywhere distal from that. So if you can start to just clean up things that you see are going wrong, then you're probably doing the thing that they need. And it's the way that I'll describe it to people, even if like I'm very transparent with them, like, yo, I have no idea what's going on with you, but I'm seeing X, Y, and Z in the way that you're moving. And if we clean these things up, then best case scenario, you're going to move better and there's going to be less complicating factors with that injury. So you'll probably feel better from that alone. And that alone will take stress off of the injured area, the area where you're having symptoms. And because of that, it's going to feel better. And then we can have kind of more focused work around the issues that you're having. And that's like a big, long way of me describing, like, yo, homie, I have no idea what's going on with you, but I know that there's stuff going on with you and we're going to fix that stuff and it'll probably make you feel better.
We were even having a similar conversation a couple weeks ago, talking about like knee pain. Somebody was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, like what about like meniscus versus ACL versus MCL versus like tendonitis, this, that, and the other?" And you're like, honestly, like I don't really care about the pathology. Like I'm just gonna figure out what hurts and what feels good. And I'm gonna look for other issues. Like if they move like shit through their hips, I'm probably just gonna help them move better through their hips, and then like
Yes.
scale in some exercise at the knee joint that feels good for them. Like that's where I'm gonna start. Like I don't know what the exact pathology is, but like I'm gonna figure out a way to kind of address the issues that I see and get them moving. It feels good, and then like we can figure that out later.
Yeah. I love it. And that's kind of what I was hinting towards before. And I'm like, that's the cool confidence that comes out of experience, right? You earlier on in your career probably would have tried to overanalyze this and throw like the newest, most effective exercise that you found of like a banded heels elevated, you know, TKE with an anterior load ipsilaterally to the left, but not the, I don't fucking know, but like overcomplicate things with hyper specificity when really that's not needed. Like it's like let's just start with the most simple thing here, because in my mind there's two things that if you can't do these well, you need to start here. And that's understanding how your breathing and your bracing relate to positioning. If you can't do it, understand that like breathing and muscular bracing, then that's where you need to start, because everything else is worse off if you don't understand that. That's like trying to build a house on a crumbled foundation. It's eventually going to fall over. So if you don't know anything that's going on with your clients, but they don't use their core well and they don't understand how breathing relates to movement, start there. Start there and then work out from there. Start to associate that to shoulder mechanics, start to associate that to lower body mechanics. And that will probably solve the problem before you even know what the problem is. And then you just act confident later on. It's like, oh, yeah, I totally knew that that was going to help because you can't do anything well if you don't do those things well.